What up, fam? Agent O here with another action figure review, and today I have the third party's Transformers figure, the PE-11 SFX, that's Scouting Force X, by the company Perfect Effect. And as you can see, he's a redesign of the Hasbro character Reflector. And I bought this figure kind of on a impulse, and I'm actually surprised to say that I'm pretty happy that I spent the money on this figure. I'm gonna jump right into this review, and I'm just gonna start with the pros and cons of this figure, and here we go. As you can see, once you get them out of the packaging, they kind of don't really have a whole lot of personality or individuality, because they're all essentially the same figure. And I watched a review where somebody had pointed that out, but I feel like it's more of an homage to the actual character that they all look the same, because it is essentially one character in three bodies. If you know your Transformers history or your character history, even though each part of Reflector has individual thought and they can act independently of each other, they all do share the same mind. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of weird, but but that's what I liked about Transformers. You had all these crazy characters and personalities, and Reflector was no different. Even though individually they look the same, once you get all the gear that they come with on them, they all start to have their own personal look. You've got your heavy gunner with the jetpack, you've got your mid to close range fighter with the dual welding pistols and combat knives. I mean, they all come with combat knives, but it seems like he would use his more so than the other two. And then you got the third guy, he's got this sniper rifle and the shoulder mounted missiles and riot shield. So they all look like they have their own personalities just based off of the weapons they have. And you can already start to formulate in your own head what each one's purpose would be as in their little three-man unit. As far as posability, they all have since it's all the same figure, they all have the same posability, but there's actually, surprisingly, for as small as these figures are, there's a decent amount of you can get a decent amount of poses and movement, range of motion out of these figures. And the fact that they're small is actually a good thing, because they are a scouting force, and they also were small in the cartoon and in the comics and whatnot. So they're gonna look really good next to your classics figures. That's why I got them anyway, was to pose them with my classics figures, and plus because I wanted more Decepticons, because for some odd reason I ended up collecting more Autobots than Decepticons from the classics generations line of Transformer figures. When I started taking pictures, I loved actually taking pictures of these figures. I had a lot of fun posing them and playing around with them. Because they look like a three-man squad of just hellions. They look like if their reconnaissance mission was to get compromised, they look like they would have the firepower to just throw down and be able to make an escape. They really bring a literal meaning to big things coming in small packages with the kind of firepower that each one is brandishing. The plastic on these figures seems to be made of a very good quality. I'm not sure what kind of plastic it is, but joints are pretty firm and stiff, and they hold pose. The figures hold poses very well. Everything that clips into place holds firm, and putting weapons into the hands, it's a bit of a struggle because of how tight the holes are. But once you get them in there, I mean, they stay. And it's a little scary, just because I was afraid at times, because of how small these figures were and how much force I had to apply to get them to hold their guns or their knives. I was afraid I was going to break something, but like I said, the plastic is really good quality. I would just suggest, if you get these figures, to just take your time and have patience with putting the weapons on, so you don't risk breaking them, because these things cost $80 plus shipping and handling. So I'm pretty sure you don't want to risk breaking your figure and then maybe ended up going to have to buy a new one. One thing that I think Perfect Effect actually does pretty well is making sure that weapons and accessories and stuff fit in with, or either fit in or take on a different type of transformation for the alternate mode. And this figure is like no different. The guns and the combat knives and some of the riot shielding that's on one of the reflector figures all fits into the zoom lens, and this is like ingenious how they did this. I was really surprised when I was doing it myself at how well it all came together. And then you have the rest of the sniper rifle that fits into what's going to end up being the bottom of the camera. All of this, fits in, and none of it looks out of place. And when you put the figure together into the alt mode, it looks great. But this is where I get into like the one and only con that I have with this figure. Now you see from the front, the figure looks pretty good. It looks like a camera. But you flip it to the back and you see robot parts, and this is the only downside I had with this figure. I can clearly see the head, even though it looks like from the front the head would be, the button, to put the shutter in action to take a picture. But from the back, it just looks like, it looks like the robot with no arms and legs stuck to, the other robots. That's the only downside of this figure. And that's really too bad, because all in all, this was a pretty well put together figure. The transformation scheme was, simple, but had enough steps in it that it felt complex. Everything is just overall, the whole thing was just so well thought out. It's just kind of odd that they would think out, they'd figure out they solved so many problems that could have developed with this figure, and then they just kind of gave up when they got to the back of the figure. Maybe they should have changed up the look of the chest pieces for the character so that they would look more like camera parts and less like robot parts. They should have came up with something to disguise the head better, or maybe have the head actually dip into the chest so that it's hidden. All these things are stuff they could have did to make this figure that much better than what it turned out. If I had seen this figure from the back and some of the promotional images, instead of everything being front shots and maybe some side profiles here and there, I probably wouldn't have bought this figure just because of this. Because the illusion's broken when you see robot parts, just like I said in the Fall of Cybertron Jazz figure review that I did. These types of things are just unacceptable. And then for it to be a third-party figure and it being as expensive as it is, you need to clear up these issues so that people can get their money's worth, period. And I think that's one of the issues that Perfect Effect had cleared up with their figure, the PE-11 AFX, that's about to come out. It's not out yet at the time of this video, but it will be out pretty soon. It's out for pre-order on TF Source and Big Bad Toy Store, yada yada yada. And those figures, two of the individual figures have different chest pieces, so it's ultimately going to make for a different look when you see the figure in its alternate mode from the back. I don't know if they fixed the issue with the head sticking out, and I honestly don't care, because I'm not picking it up anyway. I already paid for this set, and I'm cool with it despite its flaws, despite its major flaw. And I'm not going to pick up the PE-12 AFX figure. But if you like this figure despite its issue, and you missed out on the PE-11, then by all means, I guess you could go out and pick up the PE-12. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it with this review. I'm Agent O, and I'm out of here. Peace.